Madam President, I rise today.
Senator from New Jersey.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I apologize. Madam President, I rise today to discuss the Confederate monuments that are in our hallowed halls of Congress, and would like to make a live UC request, but preceding that request, just to make a few very brief remarks. The National Statuary Hall, where these Confederate statues are, in the Capitol, it's intended to honor the highest ideals of our nation. It's intended to honor the spirit of our country and those who exhibited this spirit with heroism, with courage, with distinction. It is a rare honor. Every state gets to put two people out of the entire history of the country, to pick two people who so exemplify the values, the spirit, the honor of America. There are only 100 statues, just 100 statues, two from every state. Between 1901 and 1931, 12 Confederate statues were placed in the National Statuary Hall, were placed in that hallowed hall. During the vast majority of that same period, from 1901 through 1929, after a vicious period of voter suppression and violence against African American voters and a stripping de facto of their rights and often de jure, not a single African American served in either chamber of the Congress. In fact, the exact same year the first Confederate statue was placed in the Capitol, 1901, was also the year that the last African American person would serve in Congress for almost 30 years, almost 70 from just the South. This is a period that we don't teach enough about in our country. It's a period of untold violence, of domestic terrorism, of the rise of the Klan and other white supremacist organizations that from the late 1800s to about 1950, literally thousands of Americans, about 4,400 well-documented cases, were lynched in this country. We cannot separate the Confederate statues from this history and legacy of white supremacy in this country. Indeed, in the vast history of our nation, those Confederate statues represent 4 years, roughly 4 years of the Confederacy. In the entire history of our country, hails as heroes people who took up arms against their own nation, who sought to keep and sustain that vile institution of slavery, who led us into the bloodiest war of our country's history, who lost battle after battle until they were defeated soundly. The relics of that 4+ year period, giving this sacred space to these traitors upon our nation, is not just an insult to the ideals of America as a whole. They are painful, insulting, difficult injury being compounded to so many American citizens who understand the very desire to put people who represented 4+ years of treason, the very desire to put them there in an era of vast terrorism, was yet another attempt at the suppression of some of our citizens in this country. The continued presence of these statues in the halls is an affront to African Americans and the ideals of our nation. When we proclaim this to be not just a place of liberty and justice for all, but as we seek to be a more beloved nation, a kinder nation, a nation of equal respect and equal dignity, it is an assault on all of those ideals. And so I would like to ask for unanimous consent, but before I do so, I would like to yield to the Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer.
Thank you, my friend.
Democratic leader.
First, I want to thank my dear friend, the senator from New Jersey, our caucus, the American people, are lucky to have him as such a champion, not only for this proposal, but for all his work in recent years on legislation related to police reform, racial justice, and so many other issues. In a moment, my friend will ask to pass a bill that will do something very simple and indeed long overdue. It will remove the statues here in the Capitol of men who would rend this country apart by war in order to strengthen, perpetuate, and extend the vile institution of slavery. There's a movement in America right now that demands we confront the poison of racism in our country. We must do this in many ways, both substantive and symbolic. This bill is just one of many steps we must take to acknowledge the painful history of America's original sin, slavery, and to clarify for all generations that the men who defended it shall hold no place of honor in our nation's history books. State and localities are removing Confederate statues in their public parks and municipal buildings. NASCAR has banned the Confederate flag at its events. We will soon debate renaming military installations after Confederate generals. Why should the Capitol, of all places, a symbol of the Union, a place where every American is supposed to have representation, continue to venerate such ignoble figures? Opponents of the bill will say that removing these statues is akin to forgetting or trying to erase history. No, it is not. Remembering history is a lot different than celebrating it. We teach history in our schools and universities and museums. No doubt the Civil War will continue to merit study. But statues and memorials are symbols of honor, and we need not reserve them for men who represent such a dishonorable cause. Now, Leader McConnell has ducked this issue and has said that the state should continue to decide who to send to the Capitol. Candidly, I don't think it would be too imposing to ask our states not to send statues of people who actively fought against this country. You know, there's a reason that Connecticut doesn't send a statue of Benedict Arnold to the Capitol. We have a lot of work to do to unwind centuries of racial injustice embedded in our laws and in our institutions. One of the simplest things we could do is to haul out the statues of a few old racists who represent the very antithesis of the building in which we now stand and the ideals we struggle to live up to. This, my friends, is the easy part. Let us pass this bill today and send a message to the American people that we are serious about dismantling institutional racism piece by piece, brick by brick, statue by statue, starting with our own house, the People's House, the nation's Capitol building. And I yield again to my colleague.
Madam President.
The Senator from New Jersey.
Thank you very much, Madam President. As if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent the Rules Committee be discharged from further consideration of S 3957 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. I further ask that the bill be read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Madam Chair,
The Senator from Missouri.
reserving the right to object,